Call of Duty Black Ops 6's campaign is full of twists and turns. We covered this in a video where I broke down the entire story and then explained the ending to you guys. There's a couple of options what may have happened, but one thing that we didn't talk about was the rest of the story, the little details that they added into this campaign. And there were a lot of them. As far as what I am talking about here, there are a ton of returning characters in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, whether it's the obvious ones like Frank Woods or Russell Adler, or more complex ones like Mason, or even Dragovich from Call of Duty Black Ops 1, all of which were either shown or alluded to throughout the campaign. And some questions that I've seen you guys ask on the videos are answered by these, including the return of Raul Menendez. In this video, I'm going to go over all of these characters that return in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, some which you definitely noticed, and others which were a little bit harder to find. Without further ado, let's start off by looking at a couple of the obvious ones. Now, I think the most obvious one and the one that we knew was happening is a returning character from Black Ops Cold War, and that is of course Russell Adler. He is kind of the one that puts together the team that we play as in Call of Duty Black Ops 6. He is the glue that keeps it together and is currently at the beginning of the campaign on the run from the CIA. And when he shows up, let's just say it's the first mission and it's a little bit of a surprise.
Stand down!
Wait till Woods gets a load of this. Goddamn Russell Adler, CIA traitor. You been on the run, what, 10 months?
Marshall, Woods' new project. You can ease up, son. I'm all done here.
Russell Adler returns, and as we hear here, has been on the run for about 10 months. Now, he ends up getting a message across to Frank Woods and the rest of the team, telling them where he has been, and that is oddly in Bulgaria. But as he mentions there, another one of the returning characters is Frank Woods. Now, what happened with him is in the year 1989, in other words, about 2 years before the events of this game, he was in Panama, and he shoots his best friend, Alex Mason. It is still unclear whether or not he killed him, but based off of everything we saw through the campaign, he is indeed dead, or at least missing. But at the same time, Raul Menendez shot Frank Woods in the leg, debilitating him, leading him to a life of suffering and a wheelchair. And really, he doesn't talk too much about it, except for one scene within the Safehouse.
Does it look like I'm having fun?
Nah, that's not what I meant. You got dealt a bad hand.
You're gonna get dealt bad hands, kid. With us, the stakes are high.
To be honest, I don't think I could have done it. Come back home after what happened in Panama. Trusted anyone again?
You keep believing in the ones who got your back. Who go to battle for you. Adler was one of those. When those records turned up after Panama, the wire transfers to Adler from Raul Menendez, two-bit dope slinger, I smelled bullshit.
So leading to a character who we really do not see throughout the Black Ops 6 campaign, however, is mentioned several times, being Raul Menendez, obviously the one that put Woods into the wheelchair. We also find out that he tried, or at least someone in the CIA who was working with Raul Menendez, tried framing Russell Adler to be that mole that helped out Raul Menendez and helped capture David Mason and helped kill Alex Mason. And well, later on in the campaign, we get to hear a little bit more from Russell Adler about that situation.
Last March, someone produced documents showing encrypted transfers from the drug lord Raul Menendez to my personal bank account. I got wind of it before Langley called me in from Morocco. Decided not to get on that plane.
So hence why Adler has been on the run for 10 months. But the mention of Raul Menendez is there, and not to mention they don't talk about him in the past tense. They talk about him as if he is still a drug lord working in the universe. Really never shown or never mentioned in the Pantheon situation ever again, which I found incredibly odd. However, someone who was mentioned alongside Pantheon is Jason Hudson.
I don't know if you had the pleasure of working with Jason Hudson, He was one of the casualties back in Panama. Just weeks before he died, he told me about a paramilitary group that may have infiltrated the CIA.
That paramilitary group, of course, being Pantheon. So Jason Hudson knew about Pantheon in '89 before his untimely death from Raul Menendez. But the connections do not end there. Later on in the story, we kind of find out about Jane Harrow, one of the leaders or members of Pantheon who we thought was a good guy, and find out why she kind of snapped and became a member of Pantheon. And it all had to do with the murder of her parents. On September 12, 1960, someone within the CIA was ordered to kill her parents. Now, eventually Jane Harrow joins the CIA and tries to figure out what was going on, and she couldn't. The files were redacted until someone knocked on her door, put a floppy disk under the door, and seemingly it was from Pantheon. And this floppy disk tells us that her parents were ordered to be killed by someone by the name of Emerson Black. Now, if you recognize that name, that is because this was a character within Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and he oversaw kind of like the entire operation and was the one who would call Jason Hudson between missions and gonna give him briefings. We never saw this character, but he was always on the phone and obviously plays a bigger role within the CIA. Also, just side note, he was voiced by Creed from The Office. Nope, that's not a joke. Speaking of Cold War, another character that I think everyone loved within Black Ops Cold War was Helen Park. And as it turns out, she returns within Black Ops 6.
The SAS want these scuds destroyed as much as you want that palace. We think the Iraqis could start launching at any time.
So essentially, Park is only there for one mission, operating with the SAS and MI6, just kind of like her story was in Black Ops Cold War. But the important part here is, in Cold War, you are given an option when you're playing as Bell. You can either save Lazar or you can save Park. You cannot save both. And this tells us, her being in the game, that indeed she was saved and Lazar was spared, therefore making that canon. Speaking of Cold War cameos, we have another one here, and I don't even want to say this one. I just want you to experience it like I experienced it while I was playing the game.
0900. Captain Sims.
Not now. Figured if I stuck around hell long enough, I'd see the devil.
How's he look?
Not what I expected. I left Langley because of you. Remember that, don't you?
Central Command, huh?
It's above the table. Unambiguous. Maybe you should give it a try.
No, it's a little late for me. So can you get us to Gusev?
I can get you close. But Doc, this is it for me. I'm on a different path now.
That is right, that is Lawrence Sims, no longer a member of the CIA, moved on to the Department of Defense working for CENTCOM. He's actually a higher up and wanted to help Adler out one last time here, telling him that after this he is on the straight and narrow. No more curvy edges or blurred lines alongside Russell Adler. I thought it was cool to see him return nonetheless. The next one is an interesting one. As we find out, the safe house that we are using here is an old KGB safe house, and there's a little bit of an Easter egg that you can do in this safe house, solving a bunch of puzzles and getting into a bunker underneath the building. And when you do, you end up finding some notes, one of which states that someone named D was planning something with N6. In other words, Dragovich and Nova 6, referring to the bad guy from Call of Duty Black Ops 1. Now, what's really interesting is at the very end of Black Ops 1, we drown Nikita Dragovich in water that's not that deep, which ends up being a very similar ending to what we see with Jane Harrow at the end of the game. And then you have the one that everyone is wondering about. Alex Mason. Was he mentioned? Is he alive? Is he dead? Well, the only references that we have are about his death, but it was never specifically said that he was dead. The one thing that I thought maybe was referencing him was the fact that all of the notes found around the safe house were labeled M and not Marshall. Like, these are obviously left by Troy Marshall, but it's also weird that they're labeled M, and immediately when I saw this, I thought of Mason, not Marshall. But there's also another Mason, and this one, well, this one almost brought a tear to my eye, but it's Frank Woods talking about Alex Mason's son, David Mason.
What's going on? It's strange, man. Even if we clear our names, get out alive, Don't think I can go back to the same life. This thing we got here, this group, it's good in its own fucked up way. No, but I haven't told anyone this yet. With Mason gone, I want to look after his boy, bring him up. I owe Mason that. And that kid, he's a good one. David. He's gonna amount to something someday. Maybe. I'm willing to give it a try, anyway. He'll need somebody.
So it seems as though Frank Woods, or Uncle Frank, may be taking on more of a father role after the events of this game, helping raise David Mason after what he seemingly did to his father. And this would line up with what we know from Call of Duty Black Ops 2, where he kind of helped him out and never told David Mason what actually happened with his father, or Raul Menendez, or anything in between. So where we don't get an answer for Alex Mason and whether or not he's alive and in hiding or dead like they are telling us, what we do know is David Mason is going to be with Frank Woods. So those are all of the returning characters in Black Ops 6. Some were directly there, some were references, but as you can see, there's a lot of loose ends in Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And over the coming weeks and months and even year, I'm going to be trying to tie those loose ends and figure out exactly where the story with Black Ops is going moving forward. So if that's something you're interested in, hit that like button. It'll show me to make more videos. We need to talk about who is Pantheon, who is Case, what happened to Jane Harrow, and how she turned from seemingly a good person to an evil mole within the CIA. There's a lot of questions and stones left unturned, and I plan on turning them over. So make sure you're subscribed, have notifications on, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, peace.
We are reaching for the stars, but we'll